Hello, and welcome to the HR Insights podcast with me, Caroline Rochford. In this podcast, we're going to consider the psychological impact that COVID-19 has had on us all, and how best to deal with this when staff begin to return to work. We will be thinking about how to address concerns regarding their physical and/or mental health, what the legal obligations are for employers, and how we can help staff and managers in practical ways. Today, we're joined by Paul Mudd, co-founder and director of the Mudd Partnership and mindfulness expert, who is here to share some top tips about future well-being. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Caroline, and very pleased to be here in the virtual reality that we're all sort of working at the moment, whether it's Zoom and other things online. So let me begin. And the first thing I'd like to say is that whilst we're all in the same storm, we're not all in the same boat. And the second thing, this isn't unprecedented. So let's park that word. Pandemics are, in fact, the rule, not the exception. In fact, between the Spanish flu of 1918 and 1919, which killed over 3% of the world's population, and the current coronavirus pandemic, there's been at least 5 global pandemic events in just 100 years. Whilst historically, following all the uncertainty and upheaval of a pandemic, things afterwards are never the same, and this time it will be no different. What is certain, however, is that the global sweep and local impact of COVID-19 has thrown everything in the air, and we're all in it for the long haul.
Absolutely. So, Paul, can you offer us some insight as to how to help us with this long haul?
Yes, Caroline. Let's start, though, by focusing on another word instead of unprecedented, and that word is crisis, spelt in the original Greek with a K rather than a C. And its literal translation is a vitally important or decisive state of things, or rather events, and a point at which change must come. Now, just pause for a moment. What words jump out at you here? Important, decisive, change. Well, let me introduce another, opportunity. And as President Obama's former chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel, famously said, you never let a serious crisis go to waste. It's an opportunity to do things you thought you never could. And coming back to my first point at the start of this podcast, we are not all in the same boat because we will all be at different stages on our journey to make meaning and sense of what is happening, and going through various stages such as surprise, disbelief, frustration and depression, to behaviors that include re-engaging and letting go, learning to work in the new situation, acceptance and growth. As this crisis goes on, and it will, as it's what we would call a long tail event, you may feel at times you are going backwards or getting stuck. But that's okay, and it's normal too. Because at a time like this, there are 3 phases we will all go through to a greater or lesser degree. First, there's the emergency phase, characterized by a visceral response, a rise in our energy levels as our fight or flight response is activated. And we might not be exactly sure what to do, but we are spurred on to do something. Then comes the regression phase, when people start to run out of steam, get tired, start asking, how long is this going to last? We lose focus, our sense of purpose, and we can become overwhelmed by the smallest of things. And it's all too easy to become a tad tetchy and snap at ourselves and at others, especially those close to us. Does that sound familiar? It should, because that is where a great deal of the world's population has found itself in the past 2 weeks, however buoyant and naturally resilient they may usually be. But the good news is this is then followed by the recovery phase, in which you can create a new day one, start to do things differently, and begin to build back better.
I think those phases actually are going to be really helpful, particularly when we start to think about people coming back to work. But what can you suggest that will help people actually feel better about all this?
Well, first, let's start with a question. It's an important question, and one that if we haven't asked ourselves already, we should do so right now. And that question is, after all that has happened and all that is still to happen, how am I supposed to feel? And I say it's important because the questions we ask of ourselves and of events we experience, the language we choose now and use in the stories we narrate to ourselves and tell to others are really important and will help in the process of accepting, feeling better about things, being able to move forward and feeling more in control. Regardless of background and nationality, we are human. My health and well being is your health and well being. And to be human is also to be a storyteller and a map maker because of our need for permanence, because of our need for connection, because we are colleagues, friends, and lovers, because we have families and lives to live. And that is why the isolation that many have experienced and feelings around that in this pandemic have had such a deep impact. But our liberties depend on our well being. So, yes, what positive steps can we take to help us become unstuck? If we have become stuck, to move forward with a reinvigorated resolve to create that new day one and to build our resilience and find a renewed purpose.
Can you tell us a bit more about that, Paul?
Yeah, of course. But before I do, let me say that this is not just about our well being, it is also about our well becoming. And that's something that I'm finding myself talking more and more about at the moment, because this is an opportunity for everybody and everything to reset, recharge, and build back better, be that on a personal and professional level or on a macro level as a more communitarian, just, and economically balanced society. Okay, let's get down to brass tacks. It is said that if you have more than three objectives, you may have too many. Well, I think there are three key objectives with actions you can take that will really help in all of this. And these are to break, to create, and to transform. So let's unpack this. Firstly, to break. See this as an opportunity to, what I would say and call, dump your idols. And that is to break from your usual ways of thinking and some of those beliefs, those idols you hang on to that are maybe way past their sell by date, outmoded, unhelpful, and no longer fit for purpose. And you can then start to be more present and respond and behave differently because beliefs drive behaviors, and thinking and behaving differently can change the outcomes. There is a saying, however, that goes, the difficulty lies not in the new, but in escaping the old. So be mindful of this and give yourself permission to let go of your ego and attachment to the way things are and have been. Then, second, to create. By looking back to move forward, see this as a time to take stock. Capitalize on this opportunity to do some root and branch thinking about where you are and have been and where you now want to get to. Be courageous with the questions you ask yourself. For example, leaning in, introspective questions. Where am I currently? Where do I want to be? What do I need to stop, start, continue? And with some leaning out questions, asking yourself, what have I already achieved that I wouldn't have thought possible? What am I learning about myself? And also try some future proofing questions. Things like, what do I now want my story to be? What qualities will be important going forward? What challenges will I face and what opportunities will there be? And who can help? Be kind and compassionate to yourself, knowing that it is okay to feel as you currently do, accepting what is outside your control whilst doubling down on those changed beliefs and behaviors, which will be the building blocks that help you create the new day one of your new story. And then we come to the third key objective, to transform. Your call to action to make it so. Monotony collapses time. Novelty unfolds it, but purpose makes it livable. Rest in reason, move with passion. Find your exceptional excellence and live your purpose, remembering that happiness is found in the small things, the everyday stuff. And 40% of our happiness is determined by our thoughts, actions, and attitudes, which is also why it is so important that your first step is to make that break. Because, as Einstein purportedly said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. In fact, he didn't say that. This is a classic example of a misattributed quote, and it's all part of what is known as the Matthews effect. But perhaps, Caroline, that is an avenue to explore in another podcast. However, the Stoic philosopher and one-time Roman emperor Marcus Aurelius did say, sanity means tying your well-being to your own actions. Hear that. Listen to the song beneath the words, your own actions. Again, that is so important. And just like we have a physical immune system, there's evidence that we have a psychological immune system too. And when you think about it, why not? After all, we have three brains, a head, heart, and stomach brain, all connected by a central nervous system through the vagus nerve, as it's called. And when things get bad, we rationalize, we figure it out. We are actually a lot more resilient than we think we can be. And you must use this time now to act and learn better habits and transform to become the change you want to see and be. Remember, as a wise old bear once said, you are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think.
Thanks, Paul. Is there a final tip then that you would like the listeners to sort of take away as something to really consider, mull over, and maybe an activity that they could do to actually try and work their way through any issues that they might be facing in terms of returning to work, or even if people have been at work all of this time, they might still be struggling?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked, actually, because there is, absolutely. Never forget that gratitude precedes happiness, and both are so important for our well-being too. So if you take nothing else from this podcast, hold this last thought close and act on it. Start a gratitude journal now and write down 3 to 5 things for which you are grateful for every day. And believe me, you'll soon notice a difference in how you think, feel, and act.
Thanks, Paul. I think there's some really great tips in there. And I, for one, really do need to start a gratitude journal. Thank you for joining us, Paul. How can people get in touch with you? Because I know that you do have quite a lot of resources on mindfulness. How are they best to get in touch with you?
Through our website, which is www.themudpartnership. That's MUDD partnership.co.uk. We do have a dedicated coronavirus What Next resources page that you can click onto from the home page. And there's over 40 plus now downloadable PDF handouts, links to articles that were written that are on a range of platforms, ebooks, and a series of videos as well, all with the intent and purpose to help people at this time move through and beyond the current pandemic and to build back better.
That's super. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.